Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Crets. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you like my vibe. Now, let's talk about something I've covered briefly before, the case of Hannah Cobb. We already discussed how her boyfriend, Telvin Telbo Rackins Osborne, was fatally shot and how she was initially charged with involuntary manslaughter. But now, the Osborne family is pushing to upgrade the charges to murder. What started as involuntary manslaughter has the potential to turn into a murder trial if the Osborne family gets their way. If that happens, Hannah could be facing serious time, unless she has a lawyer sharp enough to dismantle the case against her. And let's be real, if there's one person who could ensure Hannah walks free, it would be Annalise Keating. Today, we're breaking down exactly how a top-tier defense attorney like Annalise would handle this case, manipulate public perception, and make sure Hannah never spends a day in prison. Now, obviously, Annalise is fictional, but if Hannah wants to win, she needs a real lawyer just as ruthless and calculated as her. Let's get into it. Step 1. Weaponizing public perception and the online controversy. Before we even step into the courtroom, public perception already has a role in this case. And here's where things get interesting. A lot of Black people, especially Black women, don't care about this man's death. Let's talk about why. The moment the story broke, old receipts started resurfacing. Tweets, IG posts, comments, and what did they show? Telvin openly degrading Black women. Telvin worshiping white women, especially Hannah. Telvin making it clear that Black women were beneath him. Now, usually when a Black man is killed by a white woman, the entire community is in an uproar. But this time, the reaction has been shockingly different. Instead of demanding justice, a lot of Black people have been saying, Black women stay out of this, not our battle. Rest in pain, Telbo Rackins, and free Hannah Grace Cobb. It was an accident. Telbo Rackins was murdered by his white girlfriend. I'm not saying he deserved it. However, given his dating history and alleged social media post, there is reason to believe he was a coon swirler. Before I say R.I.P., I gotta know the Carfax. And this is exactly what a lawyer like Annalise would use to Hannah's advantage. Step 2. Make the jury work in Hannah's favor. Now, let's talk about the jury. Hannah is a white woman in Georgia. Statistically speaking, white jurors will sympathize with her more, especially given how Black people, particularly Black women, have distanced themselves from this case. A lawyer like Annalise would know how to lean into this. She wouldn't outright say, Black people don't care about this case, but she would use coded language to make sure the jury feels that divide. She'd say something like, ladies and gentlemen, we all know this case is unusual. This is not a story of a community rallying behind a fallen man. This is a story of a woman who was trapped in a dangerous situation, fighting to survive, and now she's being put on trial. Not because the facts changed, but because the emotions did. This subtly reminds the jury that even people from Telvin's own community are not fighting for him, which naturally makes them wonder, why? And the moment a jury starts to question the case emotionally, Hannah is winning. Step 3. Addressing the changing her story problem. Now, the biggest red flag in this case is that Hannah changed her story. First, she said she was checking the state of the gun and it went off. Later, she admitted there was a struggle. The prosecution will pounce on this. They'll say, she lied to police. She only changed her story when she realized she could go to jail. How can we believe anything she says now? Annalise? She would flip it into an advantage. She'd say, of course she panicked. She had just shot her boyfriend, a Black man, and in today's social climate, she knew exactly what that meant. She wasn't just afraid of the police, she was afraid of the entire world, assuming she was guilty, no matter what actually happened. And then she'd remind the jury of cases like Christian Obumseli, where a white woman killed her black boyfriend and the world immediately assumed she was guilty. She'd say, Hannah was scared. She thought the safest thing to say was that it was an accident. But when she had time to process what really happened, she told the truth. And the truth is, she was fighting for her life. And just like that, the prosecution's strongest argument is neutralized. Step 4. Dismantling the murder charge. Once Annalise has the jury doubting the validity of the upgraded charge, she'd go in for the kill. Murder requires intent. She'd say, if Hannah wanted to kill Telvin, why didn't she shoot him more than once? Why did she call 911? Why did she immediately cooperate? None of this is the behavior of a cold-blooded killer. Then she'd introduce forensic evidence, the gunpowder residue on Telvin's hands, proving he was reaching for the gun. The angle of the shot, which suggests a struggle, not a direct execution. And she'd sum it up like this.
What happened that night wasn't murder. It was self-defense. It was the last desperate act of a woman who knew that if she didn't act first, she wouldn't be here today.
Boom. The prosecution's argument just crumbled.
Step 5. Turning Telvin's own words against him.
Now, this is where Annalise would destroy the prosecution's case.
She would put Telvin's own words on display.
She'd pull up his Facebook posts, his Instagram captions, and his text messages, the ones that prove he wasn't just devoted to Hannah, but dangerously obsessed. He professed, I'll kill for her, I'll kill about her, and I ain't scared to say I'll die about her. But it didn't stop there. Telvin didn't just declare his willingness to kill or die over Hannah. He also made it clear how much he despised women who didn't look like her. He openly degraded black women, going so far as to say he would rather commit bestiality than be intimate with a black woman. Annalise would hammer this point home.
This is not just a man in love. This is a man who built his entire identity around one woman, to the point where he publicly declared he would kill for her, to the point where he degraded every other type of woman, as if Hannah was the only one worthy of his life, or of someone else's death.
And then she'd frame it in a way the jury cannot ignore.
Hannah was afraid of what Telvin would do to her because he had already told the world what he was capable of. If he was willing to kill for her, what would he do to her if she tried to leave? If he had no problem saying he'd take a life, how could she be sure that life wouldn't be hers?
She would pull up his exact words, let them sit in the air, let the jury see for themselves what kind of man Telvin really was. And then she'd drive it home. Telvin told us exactly who he was. He told us that losing Hannah would break him. And on the night she tried to leave for good, he snapped. And she knew this time he wasn't letting her go. At this point, the jury no longer sees Hannah as a murderer.
They see a woman who was trapped in a toxic, obsessive relationship, who acted in self-defense.
Step 6, the closing argument that seals the deal.
Now, Annalise isn't just going to win. She's going to make sure Hannah walks out of that courtroom untouchable.
She'll step up to the jury, voice low, controlled. Hannah Cobb was afraid of Telvin Osborne long before that night. She knew his temper. She knew what he was capable of. And when she finally decided to leave him, he made good on his threats. But what he didn't expect was that she would fight back. She'd pause, let it sink in. You don't have to like Hannah. You don't even have to believe she's innocent. But what you do have to believe is that there is reasonable doubt.
And in this country, reasonable doubt means one thing: you cannot convict.
And just like that, it's over.
So, will Hannah actually walk free? I don't know.
Do my arguments sound a little dramatic? Maybe even unrealistic? Probably. But let's be real. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just someone who watches way too many crime TV shows and has a solid understanding of how good defense attorneys shape narratives. But here's the thing. Hannah's real-life lawyer, if they're even half decent, is going to explore some of these exact strategies.
Will they pull out Telvin's social media history to show his obsessive nature? Probably.
Will they highlight the racial divide in public perception and how Black women aren't rallying behind this case? They should. Will they work to reduce this charge back down to manslaughter or even get her off completely? If they know what they're doing, absolutely. Now, does that mean Hannah definitely walks scot-free? Not necessarily. But at the very least, a lawyer who knows how to argue like Annalise isn't letting her rot in prison for life. So, what do y'all think? Could this defense actually work? Would a lawyer like Annalise get Hannah off? Let's talk about it in the comments. And like and subscribe if you had a good time. Until the next video, bye guys.